Man, I really hate that that chick says that every time now. It's
Right.
like, I pushed the button. Like,
Now you got to think about it.
welcome back to the Vanquishing Evil Management Initiative. Nice long name. I'm here
Hey,
with
Tim.
Andy. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Tim?
I'm good. It's been a little while. Been on a little hiatus.
Yeah, we haven't published much lately.
Yeah, it's been nice.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about this crazy Zoom lady voice and how I just hate it, and she cannot perform her work that way any longer.
She's new. We didn't ask her to be here.
No.
A different topic, if I can suggest this. How do you think about managing people who are struggling in their jobs?
What does it mean to be struggling in your job? So that's kind of the first place my mind goes, because that's not cut and dry, right? You can label somebody a bad performer or somebody who's struggling. What does that mean? Are they new to the role or new to the company? And there's a break-in process, right? There's a learning curve. Are they actually producing, but not what you thought they might produce? And then that really comes down to expectations and clarity of communication, right? Mm-hmm. Do they not share your vision or listen? Or do you not listen to them? And so when you hear, you think one thing when they're actually explaining another. There's all sorts of ways we can be disconnected and label it bad performance or underperformance, or this person is just struggling. And so I guess that's the first question. What does that look like? And have you, as a manager, codified that? Have you actually written the bullet points down? And have you expressed it to them more than once in a way that's saying, hey, expectations are here, you're over here, what's going on in the middle? Why are we so far apart?
Right. Yeah. So you've managed people in the military, you've managed people in government, you've managed people in the corporate sphere. Are the issues the same?
No, I mean, there's lots of issues, right? So here's another issue. Did you choose your team? Because if you chose your team, if you have a hiring process, if you have a philosophy on team dynamics and everything, then technically you should have a team full of high performers because you chose them. If you didn't choose your team, then it's probably way easier to label them as like, well, they're a low performer, or they're struggling, because maybe I wouldn't have chose that person. But do we still have an obligation to help that person develop, even though we didn't choose them, we may not want them around? Right. And that's a reality, right? Because in government, in the military, you don't really get to choose your team. You end up with people and you have to motivate them and develop them and bring that team together. Whereas, and even in the corporate world, if you move jobs, you're going to inherit a lot of people. If somebody else leaves their management role, you may inherit people for a time being or permanently. And so how do you onboard existing people into your thought process of team dynamics? So there could be a fit problem. Your choice, not your choice. There could be a toxicity problem. Some people just suck. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Vanquishing evil management. I guess I'm not supposed to say that. But yeah, some people suck. They don't want to get along, right?
Right.
And so that is the type of thing that you may inherit, that type of person. But does that make them a bad person? Like, are they crap?
Well, I think what you're connecting to is the distinction between the human being and the work that they're doing.
Yeah, or how they relate to other people. The funny thing is, I was just on a leadership workshop for the last 3 days, and it was really good. And one of the things that they brought up was the motivation to perform, or motivation to develop, or motivation to learn, like what motivates us. And they asked the question, they said, how have you had good or bad role models in your past that have motivated you one way or another? And actually, almost my entire leadership style is based on bad leadership I've had previously. I have seen people do things maybe for good reasons and they turned out bad. I've seen people do terrible things for inexplicable reasons, things I couldn't figure out, or just people that didn't know any better, which is kind of how we started this podcast anyway.
Right, right.
And I've built an entire philosophy to try to keep that out of my teams and shield my teams from those evil external forces, right? So like, say you have somebody on your team that's just not getting along. It doesn't mean they're not a good person, not a valuable person. And they are probably, especially if you inherited them, they're probably a little bit insecure.
Right.
Why are we insecure? Because we can point to other managers and leaders and be like, that person is insecure. But it's the same with employees. And what is our part in that equation? What are we doing to contribute to that insecurity? Right? It's the whole Maslow thing that you talk about all the time.
Yeah. Job one is to create certainty for people and to help them feel important, contributing human beings.
Yeah.
If they feel valued as human beings, they're way more likely to take direction. They're way more likely to want to learn. And they're going to feel safer in the environment.
And you probably shouldn't approach the conversation like, hey, Bob, I kind of noticed that you suck. Probably not the way to go about it, right? I mean, that's, not super nice. That person is a human. They have feelings. That person is not oblivious. They know what people say about them. They know what's being thought about them, and they know why you're asking them into that meeting.
And they know when they're not performing.
Yeah.
In most cases, people know when they're not meeting expectations, and they're not happy about it.
No, and they're not happy they have to talk to you about it. So how do we have that conversation, Andy? Like, what's the best way to prime that one up? Because this is probably like the worst underperforming thing with somebody that we don't think wants to perform, when actually nobody wants to be in this boat.
I think it's pretty rare. I look at it like this. I don't know. I'd love your reaction to this. I think there are only 3 reasons why people don't perform. One is they don't know what's expected of them. 2 is they don't have the skills or the resources to do their job well. And 3rd, they're actively trying not to do it. They're putting a wrench in the works for some reason, because they disagree with the direction, they disagree with what they're trying to do, or they're just not a good fit, and they're trying to raise their hand and say, this isn't for me.
All right, talk me through them.
Right. So number 1 is what's expected of me. Whose job is that to set clear expectations?
Both. It starts with the manager,
right,
and it should be mirrored by the employee.
Right.
Communication is 2 ways.
That's right.
Yeah. And I know this because I've been married for 17 years. And I am super clear with my wife. No, I'm just kidding. She is super clear with me, and I am less than clear back with her.
Right. Yeah. If we don't know where we're going, there's just no way. It's sheer luck if we get there, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so that's job 1. And it starts with the manager, as you said. Number 2 is, do I have the skill set and the resources to do my job well? Again, that's a job first of the manager, to match up the skill set with the role and to make sure the resources are there and the blockers are out of the way. Right?
But is that just on the manager?
I don't think any of this is just on the manager.
Because what if I believe you have everything you need and you don't believe that?
Well, then my job as a manager is to give you the confidence you need to move forward.
What if you're not getting the feedback from the employee? They're just like, I'm trying, I'm doing the best I have with what I have. And you're like, you have everything you could ever want, because I could do it with everything you have.
Bingo. You heard that, right?
The evil, right there, the unintentional evil that sabotages the relationship.
Right, right. I could do everything with what you got.
Sometimes we just need to say, I think you should be doing better. What do you need from me? Because I don't think I've given you everything.
Right.
Notice I didn't say you're not doing well. I think you should be doing better. It's probably something I'm not giving you.
Right, right. And what I think you're connecting to, Tim, is ownership. It's in my world, my belief, it's the leader's job to create an environment where the employee, the team member feels safe, feels capable,
yeah,
has what he or she needs to move forward. And it's the team member's job to be straight up and honest about what's going on, and make an effort to learn.
It's also the manager's job to explicitly create an environment where I expect to be questioned and given feedback on how I architect things. And I need to respond with grace and curiosity.
Right. Yeah.
Otherwise, the questions aren't going to come because people don't want to deal with me.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I'm really curious about that, because somebody new to the group, somebody who wants to make a good impression, someone who feels like they're under the microscope, how eager is that person going to be to ask a lot of questions in that environment?
Well, it depends. When I onboard new people, I have 2 90-minute PowerPoint decks that we go through. And the entire team, as many people as can show up. And the first one we go through is team dynamics and expectations. And we talk about team philosophy. And the first expectation is that you will question what you're told is true. You will question why it's true and why it needs to continue being done that way. Because without that, we don't ever improve. We just continue to perpetuate the same old, same old. And then I have the people that are on the team give examples of how they've questioned me. And it's good and it's okay. And then the rest of the team reassures them, this is the way it goes. It's fine.
And how do you have the new person connect with the existing team?
Well, obviously there's some sort of an infrastructure they work in, like a little bit of a hierarchy or within a team within the big team. But also we let them buddy up with somebody who's in the org but not in their team, and also people that are not in the org that are on other teams.
And what's the impact of that?
They have a place to ask questions without feeling dumb. They have a place to say, like, if I do this, will I really get this result?
Right.
They have a place to see how other teams run that is quite different from how we run, to see, like, well, in my exceedingly humble opinion, that we do it way better.
Can always count on you to let me know when you're doing something right.
Hey, that's what I'm here for.
So I want to dig into one more thing. One thing you mentioned, which feels really counterintuitive to all the management books I've ever read and all the leadership books, which is this curiosity thing. Nobody ever talks about curiosity as a trademark of leadership.
Yeah, it's huge. So let's say you're my employee, Andy, and I give you the project and I give you the parameters and the outcomes. And as I give them to you, you think, like, that's a terrible idea. Like, there's obviously something missing here, or I don't understand something. And so you decide you're going to bring it up to me in front of the rest of the group at the staff meeting. Well, how do I contain myself from being embarrassed in front of the people I manage? Or in front of my peers or in front of my bosses.
That's why you make the big bucks. You get paid to be embarrassed.
Exactly. It's through curiosity, right? Because you can't really be defensive if you actually want to understand. So the thing is if you come to me with feedback and it makes me mad, like I get mad right away, right?
Mm-hmm. Triggered.
Why am I mad? It's because I actually don't understand. And it's a personal attack.
Mm-hmm.
But if I lean into like, I don't understand where this is coming from, why don't I just ask that question?
Mm-hmm.
Help me understand where this is coming from, because I didn't see this coming. I don't see it that way, but like we definitely need to push through this. Like this can just be taken care of and we can move forward. And then take a deep breath and be quiet and listen, just like you're listening to a client, and ask your next question and ask your next question and dig in. And pretty soon you'll come to a place, you may not settle it right there, but come to a common ground to say like, okay, I'm still not where you ended. However, I understand where you started from, and that makes sense. So what can I do to help iron this out over time? Curiosity is so important whenever we receive feedback or criticism, or honestly, if we just don't understand. We need to lean into that. And if we approach people with curiosity, our criticism starts to not sound like criticism. It sounds like, help me understand it, questions, clarity. And we just show up as a better person.
Right. Yeah. And of course, I think the reason I love that, and I agree, and you and I have talked about that many times. The hard part of that is that as leaders, we rise up through the organization we're rewarded by making decisions, by telling people what to do, by having the answer. And what you're suggesting is you don't have to have the answer all the time.
You know, it's even better if you don't have the answer. You should just be happy if you have the right problem statement. Because that's really how leaders waste their people's time, is when they don't think through the problem statement to get to a solvable problem that will actually create the outcome that they want. So this is why dialogue is so important. This is why you should delve out projects like, hey, this project has to get done.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I think we need to do, but you have a couple days to get back to me on what this project's actually going to accomplish, why that's important, to who that's important to, and what group will this project satisfy. They can think it through, and then they can compare it to what I thought, and then it becomes a collaboration. Mm-hmm. And they get ownership.
Right.
So that's the thing. I shouldn't be owning these things. Like, I'm going to get the credit because I have amazing people, but they have to own it so that I don't have to ride them for deadlines and deliverables and things like that.
I'm laughing because we ventured quite a ways away from our first original question, which was how do we deal with problem performers?
Usually, in my experience, the problem performance lives with the manager.
Right. So in
what's
the spirit of
what's the third person? The third type of person, the sabotage person.
Right.
Let's finish that out.
Right. So this person is for some reason choosing not to do his or her job, right?
Okay.
And it might be because she's not confident to do it. It might be because she disagrees with the spirit, just what you were just mentioning, like come back to me with why this is a good idea. She might disagree with the approach. It might be a little bit passive aggressive about it. Or it might just be a bad fit. We've got somebody here who just is not doing the job he or she was meant to do in the world. And again, whose job is it to sort that out?
Always falls to the manager, because that left untreated, that symptom left untreated is going to be a cancer to the team.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
It's going to be a cancer to you because you're going to be upset and sidetracked thinking about this problem person. And like we kind of started off discussing, that person doesn't want to be that way. There's very few people who truly suck.
I think it's rare.
I mean, but I have met a few of them. I've had more than my fair share. I keep a list. But most of the people, there's a disconnect, right? And so how do we approach that person as two humans on opposite sides of the table and say, I don't understand how to serve you.
Mhm.
Like, what is it that you want?
Right. What is it you need?
Yeah.
Right. And let them know, by the way, that you want them to be successful. And that you believe in them.
Yeah.
As human beings first, and then as team members second.
Have you ever looked at somebody's resume?
Of course, many times, just like you.
Yeah. Do you ever see a line that was like, oh, I sucked at that job, it was the worst. Like, it was terrible, right? What if you just like put their resume down in front of them and being like, this is an amazing resume. How did you come from this to like feeling like this? Because I can see the way you feel. And I know the way it makes me feel. And I don't think there's a reason for it. Like, I'm obviously not being of service to you. I'm not giving you something. You're not happy. What is it that you need? Like, because I'm there to give you whatever I can to help you be happy, whether it's new role, new team, different things.
Tim, that's a pretty humble way of approaching leadership and management. Doesn't it destroy your credibility and your authority when you show up that way with a team member?
Well, see, here's the thing. I'm already the dumbest person in the room. I rely on my team to help me understand. I hire experts in their field because I manage initiatives on behalf of the company that I can't do myself. So I need the team to get these things done. So it's actually their genius that makes the ship float. So I am an asset and resources allocation manager. That's what managers do. So don't misuse your resources.
Right. Right. Yeah. So let's sum up for the people in the spirit of vanquishing evil. What's the 2 or 3 or 4 things we would leave people with around leading someone who's not meeting expectations?
The evil often exists in lack of clarity and communication.
Mm-hmm.
The evil always exists in our assumptions that go uncommunicated, unchallenged.
True.
And generally, when there is an air of discontent within the team, on some level, it's the manager's fault. Either you didn't properly set the team up to be open and communicative and be able to challenge, or you haven't seen that through. You've shut things down. You have brought your own baggage into the relationship. And guess what? You're in a relationship with everybody who works for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what teams are all about, is well-managed relationships.
Right.
Doesn't mean you need to be friends, but you need to have established relationships.
Trusting relationships.
Yeah.
Right.
Dale Carnegie, The Art of Influencing People.
Stephen Covey, seek to first to understand.
Nice.
And I guess I would just kind of leave us with this, which is when somebody isn't performing, think about what role I as a leader have played in creating that situation. Right, right. Show up with curiosity.
Yeah.
Right. There's places to learn.
When you have been not performing, why was that? I mean, not you, Andy. I know that you've always performed, but me specifically. Like, what things contributed to me having low performance?
Right.
And that list is pretty common among people. And maybe you start that conversation. The last 3 times I had trouble performing, it was these reasons. And open up and say, does this reflect you at all? Or like, help me understand, like, what's going on?
Right. And I bet in none of those cases, it was because you were a rotten human being.
I'm amazing.
We know that.
No, I mean, of course, when you're not performing, you have more anxiety than your manager does about it. It's never a good thing.
Right. Cool. All right. You are amazing.
So are you, Andy. Thanks for being my friend.
Thank you. It's my honor.
All right.
Okay. All right. Vanquishing evil management.
Evil vanquished. We're done.
Done today. Treat people well.
There's a button.